In today's video, I'm going to be making a quilted reversible vest. Hi, I'm Megan. Welcome to my sewing space, and in today's video I'm going to be self-drafting a quilted vest. I really like these ones here, and I want to take some elements from each one of these examples and turn it into my dream reversible vest. So I have my two fabrics picked out. I have this really pretty green one here. This is literally my favorite color, green, so I'm super excited to cut into this piece. I also have this little ditzy floral print here, which again, literally like my favorite shades of yellow are in this and my favorite shades of green. So I'm super excited to make a vest using both of these colors. So the one side is going to be this pretty floral, and then the other side is going to be this green and tan leaf print. Yeah, it's like a leaf silhouette. Here's what I'm dreaming up in my head. The whole thing's gonna be quilted, both sides, and one side is going to have the pockets sewn on it. I think I wanna put the pockets on the yellow side. We're going no pockets on the green side. I don't have a lot of V-neck anything in my closet, so I think I wanna make this vest a little V-neck, and it will tie, just one tie right at the top. I do not have a pattern. I'm going to be drafting this project as I go. I have a general idea of what I need to measure and how I need to plot that out on paper. I'm kind of winging it, but I will share what I measured and how I kind of calculated the vest that I'm making. So if you wanted to make one similar, you can see how I did that. So let's get right into it. Yeah. The first thing I want to talk about is the supplies that I'm going to be using to make this vest. I've got my two coordinating fabrics, cotton batting, some marking tools like a water erasable marker, some tailor's chalk, my scissors, some rulers, measuring tape, bias binding that coordinates with the fabric, a pencil and some paper, safety pins, straight pins, clips, a yardstick. Now, I did film how I plotted all my points onto paper and I drew my lines and cut out my pattern pieces, but it's really hard to see with the pencil on the white paper. I'm going to show you how I did that using this little PowerPoint slideshow instead. The first pattern piece that we're going to do is the back bodice piece. So I'm figuring out my length. So I'm measuring from my shoulder seam to where I want the finished vest to sit. And then I'm adding an inch for seam allowance. I'm using this pink jacket from my wardrobe that fits really well, that I love a lot, as a guide to figure out how wide I want my vest to be. The total width of my vest is going to be 20 inches. But I'm going to cut this pattern piece on the fold, so I'm going to divide 20 by 2 to get 10 inches. Then I'm going to measure my neckline, which is about 10 inches, again dividing by 2, which is 5 inches. I want my shoulder seam to be pretty narrow, so I'm going to go with 3 inches, and I'm just going to draw that at an angle to help fit the slope of my shoulder. Then my side seam is going to be from where I want the vest to fall at my hip all the way up to the bottom of the armhole. Then I'm drawing in an underarm curve the best I can, and then I'm going to curve the neckline down a little bit. And here's what my back bodice piece looks like, and I'm going to cut one of these out on the fold. Next, I'm going to do the front bodice piece. Again, measure from the shoulder to the belt and add 1 inch. And then I'm measuring the front bodice width, again, using my jacket that I already love. from the zipper to the side seam, and then add in the seam allowance measurement. Then I'm adding the side seam measurement from before. Then the neckline. I'm going to add the neck front opening measurement divided by 2. I'm noting this point with a dot because I'm going to then measure my V-neck depth and then draw a diagonal line from this point to the dot and erase the front part of my front seam. Next, add in my shoulder seam measurement, again angling down. Draw in my underarm curve, and there I have my front bodice piece. And then I'm going to cut 2 mirror images of this piece. And here's what all 3 pieces of my fabric should look like once they are all cut out. Okay, cutting out my pieces. Next, with right sides together, I'm pinning the front bodice pieces to the back bodice piece at the side seams and the shoulder seams. And I'm going to baste the shoulder seams together at about a 1/4 inch seam allowance. And I am using a regular stitch length on the side seams with a 1/2 inch seam allowance. Now I'm going to do a quick try on to see how this is fitting. And I like the length and the fit around my body, but I didn't do a great job with the underarm curves. So I'm going to unpick my shoulder seams, draw a new curve, cut, use the first curve as a template for the opposite side. Cut. And again, baste the shoulder seams back together. That's way better. We're going with it. Next, I unpick the basted shoulder seams. Then press open my side seams and give the whole thing a good iron. And here's what it's looking like so far. The underarms look kind of wonky, so I'm just going in and trying to cut a nicer curve. Next, I'm getting out the green fabric and I'm laying the yellow on top, then cutting a rectangle of green to size. Then I'm laying out my batting and cutting a rectangle the same size as my green fabric. And I'm going to give this a quick iron and be right back. Alright, I'm making a sandwich with my fabric and batting. Green fabric is facing out from the batting, so wrong side up, then my batting, and then the yellow will also be right side up, or facing out from the batting. Next, I'm going to use some marking tools. I have a water erasable marker and some tailor's chalk to choose from, and I have this metal yardstick, which I like the width of. So I'm going to be using my yardstick as my guide to draw my quilting lines. I'm laying my yardstick down vertically on my work. I'm drawing a vertical line down my front center and then vertical lines all the way to the left side of my vest. And then I'm starting to work on the opposite direction. And here's what this looks like up close. You'll see here's my side seam, and it worked out that everything looks pretty evenly spaced, even though it is off by a few millimeters. Next, I'm going to pin all 3 layers together using safety pins so nothing shifts while I'm sewing. And I'm trying to place my pins so they do not intersect any of my parallel lines that I just drew. Here's what this looks like. And for this project, I'm setting my needle to the center of my foot. and increasing my stitch length to 4 millimeters. And I'm just sewing straight down each of the chalk lines. When I get to the end of a line, I sew off the yellow fabric, just a stitch or two, lift my foot with my needle still down, turn my work, put my foot back down, stitch over to my next line, lift my foot with the needle down, turn my work again, and then continue sewing down the next row. Sometimes at the end of the row, instead of stitching forward to get to the next row, I have to back stitch instead. And several rows in, here is how it is looking. And I just continue to do this until the entire thing is quilted. Here is what it looks like quilted on the front. And then it's a little easier to see on the back. So now what I am going to do is cut all the way around my vest. So the front and the back look the same. Okay, so that's done. And I'll hold it upside down because it's easier. One side, two side. Okay, so, oh, I'm so excited. This is gonna be so cute. Hey Ben, I'm sorry, did I startle you? I'm sorry. Sorry for startling you. Okay, so next I need to put on the pockets, and I'm gonna do 2 patch pockets on the yellow floral side. Let's go look at that pink coat and see if that has patch pockets, and if it does, I'll make the ones for this vest the same size. It does not have patch pockets, but if you look closely, you can see the stitches for whatever style pocket this is. So I'm just gonna make mine the same size as this. So I'm gonna measure that quick, and then I'm going to do my layers, the green, the batting, and the yellow, and quilt them just like I did with the vest piece. Next, I'm adding a strip of double fold bias binding to the top of my pocket. The yellow is going to be the front of my pocket. I'm sewing the binding to the green side of the pocket first, right sides together, and using the first fold here as my guide, I'm going to sew straight down this line. Press up the binding and fold it to the other side, then sew the binding down on the front side as close to the edge of the binding as I can. Next, I'm going to bind the other 3 edges of my pocket, leaving a tail at each end that I will fold under later. I'm going to link a video in the description to the tutorial that I used to learn how to bind quilts when I first started working with binding. It's an excellent resource on how to do these next steps. But once it's sewn to the back, press everything towards the front and iron the binding towards the front middle, folding nice even corners. And then I don't have sewing clips, but I do have a bunch of binder clips that I'm going to use to hold my binding in place. Stitch the binding down close to the edge. Okay, here are my pockets, and I'm turning my tails over towards the back of the pocket and pressing the tails down. Next, before I add my pockets to the vest, I'm going to sew the vest together at the shoulder seams using a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Then I'm carefully going to press open my shoulder seams so that they are nice and flat and even. And to hide this seam so the vest can be reversed without seeing the exposed seam, I'm using a piece of binding that I pressed open, and I'm pinning the binding to the shoulder seam, trying to evenly straddle the seam so it will be nice and even, and then I'm going to stitch down on either side of the binding close to the edge. Trim up my excess binding so it's all even. And here's what this looks like. A quick try on to place my pockets. As much as it pains me to say this, they're too big. They're too tall. I think the width is okay, but the height, too tall. Here's what I'm gonna do. I'm ripping back the side binding a few inches on each side and removing the top pocket binding completely. Then folding over to get a sense of what I'm sizing down to. I'm using my phone as a guide to make sure I don't accidentally make the pockets too small. Then I trim down the pocket and reattach my binding, starting with the top of the pocket and then the sides of the pocket. Okay, here's where we're at. Also, I cut myself with my scissors. That's way better. I'm gonna pin these in place and sew them down. I'm measuring about 2 inches from the bottom and 2 inches from the front opening and pinning the pocket in place, turning my tails under so they will also get stitched in place. Then I'm going to sew the pocket down close to the outer edge of the pocket. Pockets are on. This looks so cute. I am loving it. Here's the green side, and you can see where I sewed the pocket on, but unless you were right up close on this vest, you don't notice these lines. So I suppose I could have quilted the yellow to the binding, sewn on the pocket, and then attached the green fabric afterwards, but it wouldn't have been quilted, and I really love how the green looks quilted, so no regrets here, even though you can see those stitch lines. So I accidentally picked up single fold bias binding. I'm not mad, I'm just disappointed. This here is double fold bias binding, and this is single fold, and it's significantly skinnier. So instead of trying to bind it with this skinny little binding, I'm gonna put this project on hold for a couple of days until I can get to the store to get this binding, but in double fold bias binding. But I will keep this single fold because this is what I'll use for the ties. I just wanna practice here for a second. That's gonna be super cute. So I'm just gonna pause this project and come back to it a different day. I've acquired more double fold bias tape so we can finally bind this vest. Starting with the armholes, I'm sewing my binding to the yellow side of my vest first. And this is because the white thread I'm using will blend in better with this side of the vest if I'm not 100% accurate when it comes to turning the binding to the other side. I'm going to fold the edge over to get a clean finish. Press the binding towards the armhole, flip it to the green side, and clip everything in place, and then stitch the binding down. Okay, so my underarm seams are done. Now we're gonna bind the edges all the way around. But first I'm going to sew together, I think I'm just gonna do one tie right at the top here. So just for funsies. And I think that will do it. I can always shorten them up a little bit if I need to. What I'm gonna do is cut 2 pieces. Great, I got my 2 pieces. I'm going to stitch them closed all along the long edge. So let's do that quick. At one end, I'm going to tie a knot. This will be the tail end of my tie. Then I'm just attaching them where I want them to lay, and then using a narrow seam allowance, I'm stitching them in place. Looks cute, but they are too long, so I'm taking several inches off, then tying new knots. That's way better. All right, I'm binding the edges on my vest, starting with the yellow side. Ironing and clipping the binding towards the green side. Here is my supervisor for today. Sewing the binding to the green side, careful not to catch my ties while I'm sewing. And here you have it, my reversible quilted vest is complete. What do you guys think? I am incredibly pleased with how this vest turned out. Just, I don't have a lot of words. Do I love it? Yes. And am I gonna wear it all the time? Absolutely. This is just exactly what I wanted to make, and it is just such a good feeling when you have an idea in your head and it comes together. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Bye!